AI referred web traffic was 45% more valuable than other forms of web traffic.
Because of the intent?
A combination of intent, confidence. When the model, when your best friend Claude is recommending these running shoes, it carries a lot of weight. It's like and the intent is strong if they've done all the research on platform.
Sure.
It's a highly qualified customer that's ready to buy. And so they spend more time on site and they're converting more than others.
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run podcast, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. Quick word about the huddle before we get into today's episode. If you're building a business, you already know how isolating it can get. You're making decisions daily that most people in your life don't fully understand. And the surface level networking stuff, it rarely helps. You walk out of those rooms with a stack of business cards and none of the clarity you actually needed. What my co-founders Jason Fitzgerald, Ross Yellen, and I are building at The Huddle is different. It's a peer advisory community built for early stage founders who want real accountability and real conversation. You get placed in a small cohort of people across different industries who actually have decision-making authority in their businesses. You meet monthly, you workshop each other's problems, and you build the kind of relationships where someone will tell you the thing you needed to hear, not just what sounds good. There are in-person sessions here in Boulder and virtual cohorts open to founders anywhere in the country. The three of us started The Huddle because we wanted this and it didn't exist. If you're at a point where going at it alone isn't working, or you're ready to level things up in your business, go to findmyhuddle.com and fill out the application. Link in the show notes, and we'll be in touch from there. And welcome back. We have Michael Rueckert joining on Long Run Labs today for a very special State of AI in the outdoor industry conversation. We asked the 5 biggest AI models 2,200 questions a runner would actually ask. The best shoes, the best watch, the best gels, the best races. We want to see who and what the machines bring up on their own. And what came back is not the open level playing field that everybody assumes that AI is. And today, the guy who ran the study, Michael Rueckert of Centium AI, on what AI really thinks about the running industry. Michael, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
John, thanks for having me. Super excited to dive into these numbers.
Yeah. Let's start with you. So who is Michael and what is Michael doing driving this conversation?
Yeah, so I come from the sports and outdoor industry. My background is I was in college athletics at the University of Utah, moved into the ski industry and was head of marketing for Snow Basin Resort for about 7 years. And leading a brand as we move into this AI era of discovery, essentially led me down this rabbit hole of how do my brand show up and how can we turn AI models into our biggest kind of brand advocate and have them recommending, us to others. And it led me down this big rabbit hole of experimenting and eventually building a platform called Centium AI. Centium runs essentially hundreds of prompts about kind of any business. And we're measuring how often they appear versus competitors. And really more importantly, how does AI make decisions? Where does it look? What does it think is most important? And we help brands build strategies for that. So we're at now, I think, about 220 brands on the Centium platform. Most are in the outdoor industry just based on my background and who I know and, kind of where it came from. And so we've done a lot of work and a lot of research in the outdoor industry. And this one was really fun to dive specifically into running and do a really big data set. This is the biggest data set that Centium has done. So a lot of nuggets of information here that hopefully could help listeners who are runners and potentially people who work for these brands to position themselves for the future.
So this is a piece that I've been fascinated with for a while now. I wrote a Substack article titled "The New Top of Funnel" as a chat reply, and that kind of came about after the conversation that you had over on Second Nature, where you were talking about the revitalization of PR and earned media and how these types of things, they're feeding these algorithms and models that are powering replies. And so it used to be you would Google, best gels for runners or best foods for this or whatever. And it would rank based on SEO and based on link backs and based on all these things. And now it's really, as you've talked about, sentiment and what kind of the broad base of the internet is saying, with some validation from the websites and whatnot. But yeah, so I wrote that piece, and it's forced me to start thinking about how I do partnerships with brands, because I can drive some amount of purchases. But if there's the ability, particularly with the podcast network, to structure a campaign that's feeding these models, instead of converting, and driving a 3-to-1 return on ad spend, maybe we're moving the needle by 1% for the brand. If all search can be influenced by this type of campaign, do you think we're going to get to a place where that is possible? Are we already at a place where that is possible?
I mean, I think we're there now, where PR and earned media and podcasts and the experts in the room dramatically move AI models. And the thing with AI right now is it's a bit of a black box, and there's not a lot of great insights coming out of it. You can see referral traffic to your website from LLMs. Google Analytics just made that a bit easier in the last couple of weeks. And Google Search Console is just starting to get into some of this data, but it's been very much a black box. And so I think being able to measure and quantify the impact of media and podcasts and things, we could do it now. And it helps to have a good baseline reading. And then you run prompts again across models afterwards, and you can measure the lift. The thing is, AI takes into account so many sources. And so we ran 2,200 prompts in this study. I believe the average response cited, I think it was about 7.5 websites. And so they take into account a lot of information, and all of those are influencing their answer. And so it could be one of those pieces of a larger puzzle that pushes models to recommend a brand or a product.
What percentage of brands do you think are even thinking about something like this right now? Right? Because I don't want someone listening to be like, oh my God, I've never thought about this. I'm so far behind. If that's the case in a year, that's probably true. But
Right.
curious your thoughts on that.
I'm in an echo chamber of brands that are thinking about this. And so that's who I talk to. But it's the scale of AI innovation. If you just step back and look at it, it puts things into perspective a bit. AI models didn't really start searching until about early 2025. If we all remember back when ChatGPT and some of these models first came out, and we were using them to, write poetry, and everyone's messing around with different things, they were operating on a dated set of training. You would ask it something, and it would reply to you, "I don't have the latest information." It was about early 2025 when models started searching, and so this is new. We're about a year into this new era of AI models acting like a search engine. And adoption has rapidly scaled with that, to the point where both Gemini and ChatGPT are at 1 billion active users. So if you're new to this topic, I think the world is new to this topic. And I don't think you need to feel too far behind, but don't underestimate the pace at which this is rapidly scaling, and the fact that your customers are probably making decisions on these models. I've seen data that suggests as high as, I think it was like 54% of global search volume coming from AI models, once you factor in app usage and things like that. So it's new. Don't feel overwhelmed if you're new to the party, but it's a rapidly adopted technology, and you should probably take it pretty seriously.
Before we dive into the questions that I've prepared, which means it's real serious because I generally don't. Why does this matter? Put it plainly.
So search is the primary way any business is discovered. I don't have the analytics of all the listeners and all their businesses, but I know the business that I've ran. And the main way customers find you is through search. It was Google search, and it's now becoming AI search. And so discovery is fundamental to any business. And as discovery changes to a new channel, it's highly important to stay ahead of it. And we're thinking about AI not just like a replacement for Google search. It kind of can work in that way, but it's so much more than that. When you factor, it's a bit of an influencer, and we think it's a future customer, to the point where agents and you may have personal assistants that help research products and maybe place orders for you. And so we're building in this kind of long end goal of the customer potentially becoming AI. And so it matters now. Your customers are using it. They're rapidly adopting it. That matters. And as this continues to permeate into society deeper, it probably matters even more if AI starts handling some decision-making and transactions.
I posted a bunch about AI as it relates to another property I'm involved in, Laurel Innovations, they use AI to basically enhance the race day experience from a runner tracking standpoint, a safety standpoint. And I wrote a piece on the best use case for AI in running is not for coaching, it's for safety. And I posted it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. And I got absolutely eviscerated on Threads saying this is the worst thing in the world. AI is ruining humanity, whatever. What would you say to that like dogmatic negativity of people who are afraid of AI? Maybe we don't spend a lot of time on this one because I feel like there aren't too many people that still listen to my stuff that are super anti AI. But what would you say to someone who's either apprehensive or maybe not as bought in as you or I?
It's tough. So in addition to what I do with Centium, I teach a college class. I teach sports marketing class at the University of Utah. I just had 60 students graduate, hitting the real world, and they're terrified. They're entering entry level jobs. They're worried about what that landscape looks like, and so I think the negativity around AI and the fears are definitely grounded, and I think it's valid. It could be pretty dramatically transformational to society in a good or bad way, and like time will tell. I think we're looking at it as it's inevitable, it's powerful, and so we might as well try to be on the right side of this thing and control it as much as we can. As far as the impact to brands that we work with and represent, um, I think the outdoor industry just recently experienced what it's like when a lot more people have time, when people have a lot more time on their hands during COVID, right? And if AI could automate a lot of the mundane stuff that we don't want to do, like what type of human potential could that unlock? What else are humans capable of if we're not doing kind of the minute tasks that we have been doing for years? And
I
so
mean, look at drug discovery and like all these breakthroughs in cancer research that are coming, and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and these horrible diseases that we've been studying for 100 years.
totally. And there was an innovation breakthrough today. Midjourney, who has historically been an AI video creation platform, is creating a medical arm, and they created essentially a device that scans the entire body. And so I think there's going to be mass innovation to come out of it. I'm sure healthcare will get better, and hopefully we have more time to run and to get outside and to do things we want to enjoy. I think that would be the hope.
Let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this discussion. You ran 2,200 unaided prompts across 5 models. Why does unaided matter? And what's the finding that surprised you most once the data came back?
Yeah, good question. So AI models are very keen on confirmation bias. They anchor to information that you give them in their context. And so if we said to the model, hey, compare, Solomon versus Saucony, the models are going to anchor to a lot of that information. And so we made sure we didn't mention any brands. And of the prompts we ran, it was, who are the best running brands? So we did the running industry as a whole, and it was top running brands and things like that. And then we dove into, I think, 21 different product groupings, from headphones to water bottle to shoes to vests and all kinds of different things within that. Within each of these categories, we had 20 different prompts. We pushed those 20 prompts to 5 AI models. And so essentially every category, we had 100 different responses about the topic. And so we didn't mention brands. We mentioned the categories. We segmented pretty wide. We had some variety of prompts. And we were trying to measure who AI models authentically mentioned on their own without us biasing it, in any way. And so the way we did this was through the API. So the AI models didn't have any prior chat history with us. It didn't know our location or any of that. We tried to just hit the AI directly with a question and get the response without that added context.
Let's talk through on the all prompts and then on the shoes side of things. What does it mean that Nike is number 1 in all prompts and Ultra is 10th or Adidas is 4th? Like what does that actually mean?
This new category of AEO or AI visibility is think about like a prediction algorithm. We are running a lot of prompts. And I mentioned we ran about 100 prompts per category, and we're measuring how often each brand is mentioned in the answer. Study wide, and this is all categories, all prompts from shoes to headphones to running destinations to the best running brands. Nike was mentioned the most. Cross category wide, we saw Nike mentioned 23% of the time. And again, a lot of these categories had nothing to do with Nike. So as Nike was in first place at 23%, followed by Brooks at 20%, Hoka at 19, and Adidas, like you mentioned, was tied for fourth place with Saucony. And so this is lots of different prompts, lots of different categories, and we're counting, was that brand mentioned in the answer? And the reason we're doing this at a very high sample size is AI is variable in how it responds to a prompt. I may ask it for running shoes, and you may ask it for running shoes, and we may ask it again tomorrow, and we will get a little bit of different answers. This is different than Google, where you could rank number one for a certain keyword, and maybe you rank number one for that keyword for a period of time. AI is variable in in how it answers every single prompt. And it's the intelligence behind it. And you could get kind of deep into the weeds on how AI models were trained and next token prediction and things like that. But just think AI is variable. And so we hit it with a lot of prompts, and we're measuring what percentage of the time you appear. And that's this new kind of marketing KPI of AI visibility. And so study wide, as we mentioned, Nike had the most mentions across the prompts.
So if we're looking at shoe categories, we've broken it down: road running shoes, carbon plate racing shoes, trail running shoes, gravel running shoes. The first thing that comes to mind is, what is the takeaway from the fun fact that, for example, Mount to Coast only shows up in gravel running at 12th place at 17%? Does that mean that that's something that they should focus on? Should they spend more time on the road side of things? Like, what is a takeaway for a brand like Mount to Coast or a Kip Run that's only showing up on road running shoes, but they have awesome carbon plated trail shoes? Like,
right.
how do you get tactical with this information?
Yeah, very, very interesting there. And so some like high level things. You asked something that surprised me before, and I think it was the lack of parity that we saw in the study. And so if we look study wide, and again, all prompts, this is 2,200 AI responses, we saw that the top 9 brands owned about 22% of that share of voice. And so there's a cutoff, and AI models on every answer, at least in our measurement, they mentioned about 6.5 brands per response. And so you're asking for running shoes, they're gonna give you about 6. And so there becomes a bit of a cliff at that point. And you really want to crack into that top kind of 5 or 6, and it will dramatically scale your chances of being mentioned. This is where we see, if we look at any of these categories, the about the 5 top leaders per category do quite well. And then there's a dramatic drop off from that point in time. And so like some of these brands you mentioned, they may have really strong authority in certain niche topics. Whereas as we get into broader topics, they may be highly relevant, but they may just be falling outside of that top 5 or 6, which dramatically pushes their visibility down. So for example, I'm looking at the road running shoes category right now. Brooks was mentioned 69% of the time, along with like Asics and Hoka and Nike. But then as we get down into like maybe 13th, 14th place, you mentioned Kip Run, they were mentioned 3% of the time. So there's a bit of a gap there where you want to be in that top 5. I think for a brand, you could look at this a couple of ways. You could try to chase everything, and I think that's probably quite difficult. Or you could try to own certain niches and build from there. And that's probably what I would do. I would take topics and categories that you probably do best in and try to climb into those top few places. I think that's where you'll see quite a bit more citation and referrals coming in from AI. And then in your maybe growth categories, it's really important to see how AI made that decision. And so we didn't just look at who the models mentioned. We extracted 990 citations, which was, I think, 2,500 different domains, different websites. And so a lot of this is, okay, like, how am I doing? But more importantly, how did AI get there? How did they come to that conclusion? And can I better position myself for that? And so we look at this road running shoes category and we go into the sourcing. So our runner's world was cited in 63% of the answers, run repeat 57% of the time. And we have a whole list of websites from there. And so if you want to grow in a category, I think it's really important to target those high authority voices and pitch PR, pitch content, build content on your website that positions yourself into those topics.
Let's say you're like a Scratch Labs and you're in second on the electrolyte and hydration mixes, or I guess tied with Noon for first for 74%, with Element at coming in next at 66, and then Tailwind at 57. Precision is all the way in 12th, which is interesting given the fact that hydration is in the name, and there are no electrolyte or hydration is not in any of the top 10 words. I would think that the word being in the name would help. What does a Scratch Labs do with that type of information? Do they double down on the content, as you were saying, as it relates to electrolyte and hydration mixes? They put more, like, can they put more on their website than they already have, or is it really just, yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to what you were just saying, but let's double down on that one, knowing that they're not a massive brand like a Adidas or Nike, but they have pretty good awareness in certain places.
Totally. So we're very familiar with Scratch Labs. They were actually one of the first brands to beta test Centium when we were brand new. And so we're happy that they're doing well. They have a great PR agency, Darby Communications, that works with them in this. I think it's really important to not get too comfortable when you're at the top. And the reason being is the citation patterns that we saw AI have. And so let's get down to the fundamental way of how AI answers a prompt. I teach a class at the University of Utah, and so I like to think about it like you're taking an exam. You have a closed book exam or an open book exam. If you all think back into college, closed book exam is what's in your head, what is the knowledge that you have to answer a question. And when AI models answer those prompts, they're playing into their training data, and they've been trained on essentially the history of the internet. And the more exposure they've had to brands in these categories, the more likely they are to surface their name. It gets into the fundamental way AI models work, next token prediction, things like that. But in reality, AI models do a lot of searching now. And that's the open book exam, where in their head, they may be thinking Scratch Labs because of what they've trained on, but then they go out and search and they see, okay, what does Runner's World think? What does Treeline Review think? And they'll pull in some of the latest rankings and reviews and they'll add that to their answer. And so because AI models have been trained on such essentially old data, when they search, they bias towards what's new. And in this study, we saw the average age of web pages cited was about 4 months. And so you can't get too comfortable at number one or number two because AI is constantly trying to find new information. And if you fall out of that, you probably would see a drop. And so if you're a Scratch Labs, I would say keep doubling down on what you're doing well. They're doing a great job at PR. They've built really strong authority in those categories. And when AI goes out and gets information from their favorite publications, like Gear Lab, like Runner's World, and then specifically in the electrolyte space, we also saw like Healthline cited quite a bit. They're surfacing in that, and that affirms what the model thinks. So don't get too comfortable if you're at the top. Continue to do what got you there. And if you're trying to break in and let's get into this electrolyte category. And, we mentioned Precision. They came in at 12th place. They were mentioned 21% of the time. I think the name, having those keywords in their name helps, but AI isn't as keyword driven as, say, Google searches. And if I'm asking AI, hey, I need an electrolyte mix for my marathon, that isn't exactly what AI searches. AI takes what I said and they will do their own searches. It's called query fan out, and the model will break it up into their own little searches. And so the name matching isn't the most important thing here. It's probably being mentioned where AI is looking and being mentioned the type of content AI likes.
So the joke of the Thai restaurant being called Thai food near me is is a relic of the past in the AI search time, right?
I think, there's probably like a little bit of relevance there when AI searches, maybe it comes up, but yeah, far less relevant because if you're looking for Thai food near you, AI is going to go to Yelp, but it's going to go to TripAdvisor and different platforms and your local food blogger. And it's going to take all that information into consideration to answer the prompt.
Okay, so going back to what something you were saying before, more than half the brands that surfaced appeared exactly once, and 9 brands carry most of the conversation. If I'm a smaller endurance brand listening right now, is AI just the rich get richer machine, or what is the door in?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And it certainly can be a rich get richer situation. Think Google era. You search for running shoes and Google delivers you 10 results, on page one. And you can click into page two and page three. Hardly anyone ever did, but you can. And you can continue to search deeper for more brands. We saw 6.5 brands mentioned per answer. So there's a bit of a cliff at the haves and have nots in that space. And keep in mind, AI is variable. It's not always going to say the same top 5 or 6. And this is why we saw so many brands mentioned. We saw 2,052 different entities mentioned, which we were measuring running brands, everything from headphones to water bottles to hotel chains to what cities people should visit for running and marathons. So we cast a very wide net. So in that wide net, we saw 2,000 different entities mentioned. But if you're new and you're a startup in this space or you're emerging, you do have an uphill battle to fight because AI, and this gets back to that like open book versus closed book thing. The brain of the AI has instincts and brands already in mind based on its training. It has read a lot of information about Nike and about Hoka and about Adidas in its training. And so when you're prompting about something, it's instinctually going to be thinking about those brands. And so I think it's really important to try to fast track getting a big digital footprint. You can't just live in your own website. You really need to be mentioned in a lot of different places to be surfaced. That'll help you as AI trains and continues to update models. But you do have a great opportunity to appear in the places AI looks. And so we saw AI largely going to Runner's World. 40.5% of the time, it went to Runner's World to answer a prompt. I Run Far. We saw YouTube do well, Reddit. So there's a lot of different places where AI looks. And if AI maybe isn't organically thinking about you, if you position yourself where they look, you could get discovered in that way. And so it's challenging. I do think the training component does create a bit of a rift between kind of haves and have nots, but it's not an impossible task. You just got to be smart and not just live in your website and really put emphasis into getting your brand out there digitally.
So to kind of double down on that, you don't have to beat Nike. You just have to own your own category, right? It seems that winning one category doesn't win the next. So Beats and Bose dominate headphones, but score 0 on best running brands. Science and Sport owns gels and is invisible in the broader questions. Walk me through why authority doesn't transfer and what that means for how a brand should pick its battles and categories.
Yeah, and I think that's the best place to start. So when we ask AI models about just running broadly, yeah, it's the Nikes, the Brooks, the Hokas, Solomon did really well. Also New Balance, Asics, On, and so forth. But then as we got into categories, we saw dramatically different results. And so when we say that 9 brands controlled 22% of mentions, that's study wide. But in each of the categories, we saw far more parity. And so, for example, energy gels and shoes, science and sport ranked number 1 in that category. In like hydration vests, we saw Nathan come in at second place. We saw Hydro Pack do super well in water bottles. And so you can own your category. And AI models are really good at going to the key authority voices in these spaces. AI can't try on the shoes. It can't taste the gels. It can't experience what it's like to run. And so it has to do it through other people. And we saw AI pretty smartly going to the right go-to sources for every category. So for example, when we looked at running headphones, the number one cited website wasn't Runner's World. They were second place. It was ratings.com, where it is seeking out tech specific information. We also saw like soundguides.com, Tom's Guide, and Tech Radar, more tech specific things. And so AI doesn't like paint a broad stroke across the running industry for every individual topic. It does go to very specific niches for those. And so you can own it. You can prioritize the verticals that you're in and at least get like the understanding and visibility of who moves the needle. And so, for example, if you are doing running headphones, we saw that ratings.com, and pull this one back up here, was cited 81% of the time, which is crazy. We ran 100 prompts, and in 81 of those responses, there was a link to ratings.com. So that becomes highly, highly important if you're in that category, to make sure you're well represented on that website.
This episode is brought to you by Popfly. If you're a brand trying to reach outdoor, travel, and adventure audiences, Popfly is where you should be running your creator program. It connects you with the largest community of adventure creators on the planet, people who actually use the gear, live the lifestyle, and have built real trust with their audiences. Popfly handles the whole operation: affiliate links, discount codes, creator and ambassador collaborations, all in one place. No more chasing people down over email. You scale brand momentum, track what's actually working, and every mention comes from a place of credibility because the creators you're working with genuinely mean it. Go to popfly.com to check it out, and if you want to reach out to them, let them know that we sent you. If you're enjoying Long Run Labs, we'd love it if you took a moment to leave a review. It only takes a minute, but it helps the show reach more people like you. If an episode has helped you think differently about your business or career, made a long run fly by, or taught you something new, scroll down in your podcast app and tap those stars and write a review. Thank you for your support.
Authority we didn't see translate from category to category because AI is going out and getting information very specifically within the category.
Why is Runner's World showing up so frequently? You've said Runner's World like 100 times so far, and I have a question written down about this saying it shows up in 4 of every 10 answers. Brand owned sites are under 5% of citations, and the format that wins is the best of list. So if a brand wants to show up in an AI, they just go to Runner's World, or what does the playbook look like?
If anyone from Runner's World is listening to it,
sorry, we're gonna barrage your inbox with requests here from PR people.
No, you guys kill it in this. We see this in every industry. It's really interesting. So, outdoor industry wide, like Centium works with probably about 150 outdoor brands, and the number one across the outdoor industry that we have measured is GearLab. GearLab crushes it. But for the running industry specifically, GearLab did do well, but Runner's World was on top. Every industry has their own. We see differences in tourism and hospitality, and AI has their preferred go-to sources. What's interesting about Runner's World is it came in twofold. So one, the AI models did instinctually look for Runner's World. We saw, and so we get the query fan out data on Centium, and so we could see exactly what the models searched for. And we asked for, hey, give me some running shoes. The model goes out and searches, hey, what are the best running shoes in 2026? Running shoe reviews 2026. We could see the models probing and trying to find their own information. We saw them specifically name Runner's World in 400 searches, which was about 4.5% of searches. And so I'm asking for running shoes or gravel shoes. The model is saying, well, what does Runner's World think about this? And it was specifically seeking them out, which was really interesting. So that was part of it. The models instinctually looked for Runner's World.
But how does the fact that Runner's World is so affiliate driven play a role in that, or does it?
I don't think the models are weighting that at this point in time. We work with a lot of brands who have been increasing their affiliate strategy and giving steeper pullbacks and things like that to chase more of these placements. Because I don't think the AI models are taking that into consideration.
Is that an opportunity?
I think it definitely is. I think if you're in this space and you're selling gear, and we know that like a Runner's World and some of these outlets are driving such a bulk of the AI response, it is probably worth giving stronger incentives to make sure you're mentioned more often. I don't think the models are taking that into consideration, at least on what we see. So,
do you think they will?
I guess they could look at the links and take. I think that's tough, though. I think the models want information. They want hey, like I can't put on these running shoes. And so like how am I supposed to recommend these things? And so it's going to go to, well, what do the experts say in this category? What are they saying on Reddit? Okay, like let's index some YouTube reviews, like we'll see what they're saying. And so if there's an alternative that is very clear about being unbiased, like maybe the models would pick up on it. But I think at this point, AI just associates runner's world with this category and they're instinctually going to it. So maybe, but at this point, definitely not hurting them right now. I think and we had this question on LinkedIn and it was, kind of same thing. How do brands break in? How do publications break in? And there were some very clear trends in how AI searched. And so we talked about the recency bias. The average age of a citation that we measured was, let me try to find the exact number. I think
4 months.
it was 4 months. And that was if we weight it by how many times those articles were mentioned. So the most mentioned articles and pages were new. If we look at all like 2000, or actually we had 16,000 citations, it was about 6 months. So like 4 to 6 months was kind of the hot window. And so consistent feeds of content will really help you there. And so that's one thing that Runner's World does well. The other is there's a very specific type of content AI likes. And I like to describe AI as an evidence-based thinker and an evidence-based decision maker. It's not making emotional decisions like humans might. We've been in this world of trying to inspire customers, think like Nike's Just Do It campaigns. And, you visually are trying to show your product and inspire somebody, make them feel something. AI is not like that. AI is logical. AI just wants the data. It wants the information. And so when AI is searching in this category, we saw them specifically looking for certain types of content. And so let me pull up this data here real quick. It was 49% of all of AI's kind of fan out searches that they did included the word best or the word top in them. So they're looking for what is the best running shoe? What are the top running shoes? And so the media outlets and the bloggers and Substacks and everyone that's putting out this type of content does well. If you're ranking products and you're doing reviews and things like that, AI is going towards those because the evidence-based thinker of Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT could start to put some reasoning behind this. Okay. Solomon is 1, A6 is 4, and it could start to make some of those decisions when it's trying to form its answer. And so kind of a long-winded on Runner's World of, I think AI has indexed a lot of information about them. And so they're instinctually going to them. But then beyond that, it's recency and it's that best of and top content. 49% of searches were looking for best or top. Next up was about 24%. The models were seeking reviews. So about 75% of the fan out searching by AI is looking for best, top, or review. And so if you make that type of content, you're going to play into what AI models are looking for.
To test this hypothesis, I made a best running endurance podcast of 2026 page on my website on Sunday. So today's Thursday, and it is the number one most visited non-header linked page on my site, which has been up for a while, and it's the top. Yeah, it's also the top most visited page all week. It is 2x higher than the homepage.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. You're feeding into what AI models are searching. And so there could be somebody just saying like, hey, I need a running podcast. Like, do you have any recommendations for me? And then the model is going out and searching, they're fanning out their query into those very specific things. And so that positions you really strongly. I don't think a lot of people know about this, by the way. Like query fan out is definitely an emerging kind of topic. And it's really fascinating when you break down and you see how the models search. It's almost like a human, where when you're researching and you're kind of going down rabbit holes, you could see the model follow different trends.
I got to see if I can figure out the sources of the traffic to that page. It's not clear immediately, but I'll spend some time looking on that. That's fascinating. The other action reaction question I had for you is, does it correlate to revenue? Like, so let's say Scratch starts working with you. All of a sudden, they're at number 2 ranking, and maybe they were at number 10 before, and they implemented things that you recommended. And their PR team was pitching Runner's World or whatever. Have they seen an improvement that they can correlate, or have brands that you've been working with, can they see a correlation to revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to speak like broadly about all
Yeah.
the brands that we've measured and work with. I think everyone is seeing an increase in AI traffic and revenue based on adoption. And so there's like this rising tide is lifting all boats right now. Um, there are, and Adobe has done some really good research on this. And they just put it out. And maybe I'll send this to you if you want to like link it in the show notes or something. But Adobe has been monitoring referral traffic and performance for quite some time. And they're looking, okay, if a customer comes to a website from an AI model, or they come from Google, they come from Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, however they're getting to a website, what happens? How likely are they to buy? How much time do they spend on the website? Things like that. Adobe just released some really interesting information where I think it was 45% of AI or AI referred web traffic was 45% more valuable than other forms of web traffic.
Because of the intent?
Because a combination of intent, confidence, when the model, when your best friend Claude is recommending these running shoes, it carries a lot of weight. It's like an
Yeah,
influence. And the intent is strong if they've done all the research on platform.
sure.
It's a highly qualified customer that's ready to buy. And so they spend more time on site and they're converting more than others. Conversion rates. So on Centium, we do this. We let brands connect into Google Analytics and we pull in all of their referral data to the website. And so we track how many people are getting to your website from AI models, how much revenue is coming in from AI models, and what is the conversion rate for AI traffic versus site-wide traffic. And so we're helping brands quantify that. It's not perfect right now because it's hard to, I guess it's hard to put perfect tracking on it.
The non-AI traffic versus the AI traffic is comparing apples to apples, right?
That is apples to apples. But I guess what I mean, what's not perfect is not everybody clicks the links in AI. You may
Sure,
use
but
it.
attribution is dirty to begin with, and so
Oh,
the cleanest mapping is a pivot from direct or organic or email to AI driven.
right. And I guess let's say you're comparing Google search to AI search. Google is forcing you to essentially click, and not now. Google has pivoted with AI overviews, right? But think 3 years ago, you query something and you're clicking into page 1, you're clicking into page 2, you're clicking into page 3, where AI gives you your answer organically. And and so it doesn't require you to click through. And so this is like you have to hit the links for us to get that attribution data. But if someone ran a prompt about energy gels and the AI model went and grabbed the data from Runner's World, gave you the answer, Runner's World isn't going to see that click or that traffic, and the brand might not unless they directly hit a link in the
Yep.
model. What I think probably happens is the customer then a day or two later goes on Google and purchases the product. So we're tracking it through the best way we can in Google Analytics. Um, but everyone is seeing, I would say, largely an increase in this category just as AI adoption is going up, plus being mentioned more and things like that.
Let's keep talking about media and dive into running media. So let's read the top 10 because I think they're categorically different examples within the top 10. So we have Runner's World, Trail Runner Mag, Ultra Running Mag, I Run Far, Strength Running, which is a podcast and website, Women's Running, Marathon Training Academy also has a podcast, Trail Runner Nation also has a podcast, Alley on the Run is a podcast, Believe in the Run has a podcast. Let's keep going. Rich Roll podcast, The Running Channel, I'm not familiar with that one. The Morning Shakeout also has a podcast. Outside and Run to the Top, which I believe also has a podcast. What do we make of all of this? I'm friends with number 5 Strength Running, Jason Fitzgerald. He's been writing for 15 years. I'm a little surprised that Run to the Finish is not on this list as well. They do tons of traffic and a high amount of affiliate sales for with shoes and watches. Um, so what are your takeaways from this list and the fact that maybe half of them also have podcasts associated with them?
So two different ways we measured this. And I think So the list we just ran through, we prompted AI 100 times about the best running media outlet. And so we were really pushing AI directly into this area. Some of the things we searched were running podcasts, running media, running blogs, things like that. And so we were really pushing AI hard into this corner. And in this list that Jonathan just mentioned, we were looking if that entity was mentioned. And so there's like two different ways that we measure media. One is how often they are cited, the little blue links on the AI answer. And this one was, did AI mention them directly, like by name as a brand? When we're pushing AI in the topic of media, we see a far more broad representation. You saw podcasts and different things like that, like you mentioned. And I think that's probably more exposure for AI when they're looking in that category. Then the other way that we're measuring media is citation rates. And that's a lot of the stuff we've been talking about to now. And so if you're in this world, there's two different ways you can measure this. Are you feeding it information and you're getting the little blue link, or are they mentioning you directly by name? And so yeah, kind of like an interesting nuance there. But yeah, when we pushed them to running media and running podcasts, we did see kind of the more channels they were on, the better they did. And it's probably just more places that AI has exposure to them.
Just like greater surface area.
Greater surface area. That's a good way to think about it, because we saw you win in a lot of those things. Where for you in particular, we got into the query fan out data, and it's interesting. So if I ask ChatGPT, for example, like, hey, I'm looking for a new podcast in running, like, can you make some recommendations? ChatGPT goes out and they search like 7 or 8 different searches. They don't do them all at the exact same time. They do them often chronologically, and it's based on what they find. And so they may search for a podcast, they may pull it up on Apple. And then for Long Run Labs, we saw you were mentioned on the Apple podcast page as like, hey, people who like this also may like this. And then it found you, and then the model went out and searched for you. And so yeah, surface area is really important here. And the more places that the model could find you, the more likely you are to be mentioned in that space. I'm switching over to the running media kind of data set. There was, I believe, a particular kind of podcast aggregator that was cited quite a bit. And if I can't find it, we can just put it on the Substack. But surface area is really important here, because they don't just instinctually go to your website. They're taking into account just a broad set of information. So you want to be mentioned more places.
Where does this methodology have limits, and what should people not over index or overread from a snapshot taking on a date in June?
Yeah, good point. So the real way a customer uses AI is not really like how we did it. We were one-shot prompts, 2,200 of them. The AI had no context on us. It didn't know where we were. It didn't have any information on us. It's not how customers are really using AI. It's more long form, and it's more conversational. And you may be 20 prompts deep by the time it's, maybe you're talking to AI about how your feet hurt when you run, and maybe AI just finished giving you some like recovery tips, and then maybe at the very end you're saying like, maybe I just need some new running shoes, and then AI like recommends some shoes, right? Like, it's not as simple as the way we prompted it. And the thing is, we can't replicate that. And so what we're trying to do is just like high sample size. I want to know who AI instinctually is thinking of in each of these categories. But it's not a perfect representation. And this is our data. We're prompting AI. This doesn't exactly match what the customer searched. So what we're trying to get to is thinking about AI kind of like a human. We'll say we're doing some market research on like, hey, who are the brands that come to mind for you in this space? And that's really what we're measuring here. Different customers will search different things. AI may have different contexts. It may recommend different things. But we're really just trying to get to, if we ask them 100 different times about carbon plate running shoes, okay, we've done this enough times. We have a pretty good idea who they like to talk about. That's, I'd say, the limitations of what we're looking at.
I'm just scanning the LinkedIn post I made this morning to see if anybody else had questions. And recent podcast guest Christian Rawls has a really good one. And the question is, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the future of online media that are primarily supported by ads. If LLMs are going to these sites to gather info and consumers are going to LLMs to get that curated and ranked info, then what happens when consumers stop going to the ad-supported sites that are generating the content needed for the LLMs? Human visitors show up in analytics, but AI bots are invisible. These sites are obviously important, but their revenue model seems to be in jeopardy if human visits plummet.
That is a really good question. And of course, like Christian gave a super thoughtful one like that. Brilliant, brilliant guy. I think I talked about this I went on Christian's podcast and we talked about this. And so I come from the ski industry. I was head of marketing at Snow Basin Ski Resort. It's what inspired me to build Snow Basin. I've measured a lot of ski resorts and I've seen a lot of ski specific prompting. And we saw Powder Magazine surfacing kind of like a runner's world at the top. And I was in conversation with the editors there and I let them know, and I was expecting them to be super excited. And it was an answer kind of like what Christian said. It was like, well, yeah, of course, they're stealing our information and we're not seeing the traffic and it's hurting us. It's really interesting. So I don't know the right solution for this. If I was one of these media outlets, here's what I would probably be thinking about is, let's say you do some of these rankings and reviews. Maybe you don't do it for all your content. Maybe you do it for some content. Maybe there's an application process to be in it. Maybe you're like, hey, we're Runner's World. We're about to do our top 10 gravel shoes of 2027. If you want to be considered, there's a $100 application fee and you have to send us a product or something. I don't know. I'm just making this up. But if they're not getting the ad revenue, but they are still showing tremendous value to the brands by referring them through AI, these media outlets need to find a way to compensate for that. And so it's either they're charging the brands to be mentioned, which takes away credibility, or they are charging the AI models to get the content, which I don't even know how they would fundamentally do that. Maybe we have a future like that where, like, I have to buy a subscription to New York Times if I want to read their content. Maybe AI has to do that too. I don't know. But I would probably be thinking about building AI friendly content and maybe having an application process to be considered. It's very common for like other awards and things. And we see it in other industries quite a bit too.
Does paid content get dinged in this process? Or, like, again, back to Runner's World, the fact that they have an affiliate model, you said that doesn't get dinged because they can't really, it doesn't seem to matter. But what about YouTube content or Instagram content that's labeled as paid promotion? Is it still indexing the transcript and understanding what a runner might be saying about meat delivery from Good Ranchers?
Right.
Or is the fact that that's a paid promotion then getting a demerit?
Oh, that's a great question. And so we're not seeing a limit on affiliate. We have seen like sponsored content on websites not do super well. I have landed, like, in my Snow Basin days, sponsored articles that were cited by AI. It's like we've seen it work, but it doesn't work nearly as well as if it's organic. The YouTube and social media piece, I don't know. My assumption is it probably doesn't really hurt, but I don't want to claim that without measuring it. Right. So
Fair.
My assumption is probably not. I think the AI model is looking at the headline of the YouTube video and it's a top 5 running shoe of 2026. And it's like, yes, I'm in. And then it grabs the transcript and buried in the transcript, it's paid, but I don't think it's going to stop it.
Who stands to benefit the most? Who does this work really well for? And who is the type of person that's listening to this and they're like, holy shit, I know exactly what to do. What is that persona, or what is that brand?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's brands that are good at PR and good at getting other people to talk about them. We saw a minuscule percent of these prompts go directly to the brands. And it largely went to media and Reddit and YouTube and the gear reviewers and so forth. We saw very, very minimal citation going directly to the specific brands. And I think one of the examples, I think it was Solomon, was like one of the best. And I think they were cited.
Shout out to Outside PR. They work with Outside PR and they do a fantastic job.
Nice. I used to work with Outside PR back in my Snow Basin days. I think they were cited like 2% of the time on their specific website. And so 95% or so of citations were going to third parties, not the brand. And so I think the mistake that a lot of brands are making right now is they are treating AEO and AI visibility like SEO, and they're trying to maybe optimize their website into the mentions, and you could do that to a degree, but the far more beneficial thing, especially in the outdoor industry, is media. And so I think the people that are listening to this that will do well are those that are great at getting other people to talk about their brand and can build relationships and can activate Reddit and can activate all the gear reviewers and can get on YouTube and can cast a very wide kind of spider web of content across the internet. And it's just more places for AI to find that narrative.
I'm laughing because like you're describing me.
Yeah.
Like I just have a lot of surface area, and I really. So does this become like a mid funnel focus where I am not the best converter of every single brand I work with, but I do a damn good job at the top and middle of the funnel, and kind of warming people up to a new brand or a new thing, and at least getting them to look at it. But I don't like squeezing at the bottom of the funnel to force that conversion. I'd rather have it be more organic and mid funnel. Is like, am I really well suited for something like this where we're seeing the future favor that type of relationship?
I think so. I've seen a lot of people say AI search is the entire funnel, and the entire funnel has collapsed.
But it kind of is.
Right. And I mean, marketers have done, you use like Instagram and meta advertising and TikTok for the top of the funnel, and you go a little heavier on Google search at the bottom of the funnel. AI search can be the entire funnel because they could come at the model with a problem and they may have no idea what they want. I mentioned that example earlier of like, my feet hurt. And maybe eventually they diagnose it came from like their running shoes, and eventually AI is recommending running shoes, and suddenly they're clicking to the website to buy them. They just went from the top all the way to the bottom, ready to purchase in one conversation. So
Right, because
I
it's
would,
like talking to a friend who can
yeah,
take you the whole way.
takes you the whole way, right? So I would think about it as the entire funnel, but I think most people are entering an AI model at the mid to top funnel space. I think when you have like real strong intent and you're ready to buy something, I still think people go to Google for that. I don't think I don't go into Claude to just get me onto Solomon's website to buy a pair of shoes. I still go to Google for that. And so
Right.
I do think you're right that it is the mid to top heavy for sure.
Bit of a selfish question. What should I do? Knowing what you know about my business, the podcast network that I'm running, the Substack and the website and the brand consulting and the market research opportunities, advising, like how should I take this information and use it for good?
See, like you mentioned, you're already doing a great job with surface area, and you have multiple podcasts, you have a Substack, you're active on social media. There's a lot of places for AI models to find you. And we saw that surfaced. So when we were prompting about media and podcasts and kind of experts in the running industry, that's where we saw your name come up. And, I have some of your responses here in front of me. ChatGPT said, for the long run, Jonathan Levitt, storyteller style interviews, exploring the why behind runners' long-term motivation and big goals. Claude said you're one of the most extroverted people in the running space and a stellar runner in your own right. Look at that. Just placing great
Thanks,
content.
Claude.
Yeah.
You're my bud.
And he said you land incredible interviews with top athletes. So I think for you, I would continue to cast that like spider web out a little further. I think I'm really curious how this content in particular is going to do for you, because we're about to put out, the best running brands, and we have 20 different verticals and subsets that we measure. And I think if you build a lot of that kind of review, best of type content, models will probably start biasing towards you a little bit more. And I think, like, especially when I look at how AI describes you on the Centium platform, we have this feature called brand perception. And it's anytime they mention your name as a brand, or you would be as an individual, what do they say about you? And we index all of it, like hundreds of mentions. Like when they say Jonathan Levitt, like, what do they say? And we're going to count this over and over and over again. And then we summarize it and we build this like frequency and perception map. And so something for you, I think, is having a consistent narrative to put out to AI that it could kind of latch onto. Um, and we see here ChatGPT says storyteller style interview is explaining the why. Claude says, extroverted people, incredible interviews. Gemini cited that you used to work for Inside Tracker, and that you're connected in the running community. Here's another one that Gemini said when they went into your Substack, focusing on the business of endurance, including sponsorships, media, and founders. And so we kind of have 5 very different narratives there. And they all have potential. AI works in this like next token prediction mechanism where the more often they see a repeated pattern, the more likely they're going to surface that. And so if there's something you really want AI to take away about you or your podcast, I would try to make that theme scattered across that kind of spider web of content. So like surface area, consistent narrative. And then if you can land some home runs with like some of these heavy hitting media outlets, you'll probably do pretty well.
Cool. Love it. Thanks for indulging me on that one. We have to talk about the, how is it described? Running destinations and towns. I am currently located in number 1. Sorry to Flagstaff. Boulder was number 1. Flagstaff was ranked number 5. Boston, number 2. San Francisco, number 3. New York, number 4. Then Flagstaff, Chicago, Portland, Oregon, San Diego, London, Chamonix, Denver, Vancouver, Asheville, North Carolina, the Dolomites, which I can't believe that that's not number 1, and then Seattle. And Weston is ranked as the number 1 runner-friendly hotel and travel. I don't know if they still do it, but they had a run concierge. My friend Chris Heisler used to run that program. And they had a partnership with Hyperice. You could have their products in your room. They had really comfortable beds. So it's cool to see the focus that Weston had, and maybe still has apparently, on running, where you could talk to the concierge at the desk and ask for good running routes, and they would actually know what you're asking about and how to make recommendations related to safety and lighting and all these types of bathrooms and all these types of things. How should like a tourism board think about the list, this list, and the outputs of Centium?
I love this question because we actually work with like 25 tourism boards, and that's like one of our main customers. We're working with a lot of the major outdoor tourism boards already, whether it's the ski industry or some different spaces. And so we're very familiar with the destination marketing space. A couple just like quick thoughts. Let's start on the Weston and the running space.
No, let's start on Boulder versus Flagstaff. Just kidding.
Real quick on Weston before I forget. To me, that's just like winning a niche and winning a vertical. And it probably wasn't even that hard. You mentioned it's a concierge that's just educated on running routes in the city. Not that hard. They put it out on their website. AI models latch onto it. And now a runner, and think about how AI use really goes. Like you've got your personal Claude AI model or whatever model you use. It knows you love running. And so when it's helping you plan a vacation, it's going to know like, hey, like I should recommend Weston to John because John loves running. And so it probably wasn't even that difficult for them to own that niche. And it's just like a little bit of content and storytelling just to claim that open space. And no other hotel really was trying to claim that open space. And so I think that's like a really good example of seeing an opportunity and maybe trying to own a niche.
Yeah, that's a great point.
On running destinations and towns. And so we saw Boulder mentioned 55% of the time when we're asking about like the best destinations and places to run. Pretty big gap between them and second place. Second place was Boston at 43%. So they really dominated. So I went into all the raw data and we asked AI, what were the clear themes that came up here? And for Boulder in particular, there were 75 different mentions about just like trails and open space. 200 miles of trails adjacent to the city was like the big narrative that AI kept latching onto for Boulder. Next up, it really latched onto the altitude and the elevation. Mentioned that 42 different times about this like living at high elevation. It had this like live high, race low kind of theme that it kept mentioning. Another big one was just being a mecca for running culture, a runner's paradise, consistently ranked among America's best running towns. And it got a lot of that information from the sourcing. We saw there was an Outside magazine list that had mentioned Boulder that AI models were pretty frequently going to. And so for a tourism destination, it really works like a brand. It's I'd say the perception is really important, and what they are saying about those towns in particular. And so for Boulder, we're seeing 200 trails, high elevation, runner's paradise, running mecca, like great perception that they have pushed to these models. And then the sourcing and a lot of these same fundamentals that work for brands. Like, okay, we saw there was an Outside magazine list on the best cities for runners. Actually, that was Runner's World, best cities for runners. Outside magazines was America's best trail running towns. Both of those were cited about like 40% of the time. So you're a tourism board. Maybe Runner's World hasn't been on your radar. Maybe you're still thinking about Condé Nast and Lonely Planet and like your classic travel media outlets. Maybe you should be thinking about some of these niches and pitching those outlets and taking someone from outside or Runner's World and flying them out, putting them up in a hotel and having them experience the city. Kind of those types of things. I think it comes down to a lot of the same fundamentals of PR and just like that narrative and perception that you're putting forward to the models.
Let's talk about running specialty retailers. Tops are Roadrunner Sports, Fleet Feet, Running Warehouse, REI, Dick's, Amazon, Zappos. Then all of the shoe brands: Nike, Brooks, Asics, Hoka, Adidas, New Balance, A Runner's Mind, and The Feed. I didn't know you could buy shoes on The Feed. Anyway, talk to us about that.
Roadrunnersports.com was cited 59% of the time. If we were prompting with intent, like, hey, I need a place to buy these products, they were cited 59% of the time. Now, if we're citing, hey, just give me the best running shoes, that's where we saw the media really dominate. But once it shifted and there became intent, like, hey, I'm ready to buy this, where can I go buy it? That's when we saw the retailers really start to do well. And that's not uncommon with a lot of the businesses that we've measured at Centium. We just finished measuring a furniture kind of sales company. And same thing, if you're prompting about like, hey, what are the best couches I could buy? This particular outlet was not cited. But if you're saying like, I want to buy a couch, where can I go? Then they were cited. And so I would think about probably mostly in that way for a lot of these retailers. And so Roadrunner Sports did the best, followed by Running Warehouse. And I'm looking at the citation rates in particular here. I don't have an exact reason on why they did so well. Like we could dive into the raw data and try to figure it out. I could see that their website was the most cited page that we had, and scrolling through our kind of data here to see if there was any sub pages that did really well, and not really. It was like their homepage that the models were pushing towards. And so my hunch is AI is probably just like indexed a lot of information about them. Maybe it's seen a lot of people on Reddit saying like, oh, you need to go to Roadrunner Sports. But we do see the game change a little bit based on intent level. And that's where the retailers do well. Our REI in particular is one that consistently does well. Like without the buying intent, let's just say like, hey, like what are some good running shoes? REI is one of those few retailers that actually enters those conversations.
They do a lot of creator and media stuff too.
Nice. We see it go to them as like an aggregator. Let's say it's trail running shoes. AI can't put them on. It doesn't know. And so it's like, well, let me go to REI and just see like what's current, like who are they selling? And it's an aggregator, and AI does like to go to these aggregators.
Makes sense. Just reading through a couple of the other comments. Races is the most wide open category. The leader, Chicago Marathon, sits at just 16% and 165 events surfaced. Nobody owns best races. Shockingly, Hard Rock was ahead of Western States. What's your take on, and Chicago was ahead of Boston, which pains me to hear. Sorry, Chicago. What's your take on this, and what should a race operator be taking away?
Just a wide open. Like I'm looking at these rankings right now, and this is definitely the most parity we saw of any category. Where, you know,
is it because the volume is so high?
I guess probably. Like I'm looking at like the Sydney Marathon, for example, was ranked 24, and in most of our data, the gap between like the haves and have-nots is massive. But there was only 11 percentage points separating number 25 and number 1. So wide open category for anyone to own. I would like probably go back to that limitation that we talked about earlier. The model doesn't know where we're at. There was no geographic data associated with these prompts. In reality, if I was, in the suburbs of Chicago and I'm prompting about a marathon, like it's probably going to be more likely to
Sure.
recommend me to that one. But taking all the biases aside, like it's a pretty wide open, um, it's a pretty wide open topic. Let me get into the websites and see, maybe there was like a list that really drove this. Like my like natural reaction anytime I see this is like, okay, what were the rankings? And then I immediately go into the sourcing. And I was like, okay, where do they look? It's like run.outsideonline.com was cited 22% of the time. We saw marathonhandbook.com cited 33% of the time. That was the most cited website. And then Wikipedia was 22% of the time. And so if you're a race and you're putting one on, there are probably maybe certain spaces that you should be emphasizing. I'm glad that Wikipedia just came up because I do want to like double click on that. ChatGPT in particular really likes Wikipedia. Across all brands that Centium has ever measured, ChatGPT's number one citation is Wikipedia. In this data set, kind of running wide, we saw Wikipedia was number 5 for ChatGPT. And the great thing about Wikipedia is you do have a little bit of control over it. You can contribute to a Wikipedia page. You have to be ethical. You can't be promotional. It's very factual. You need to think like a journalist. But I have contributed to Wikipedia pages for brands I run. We just built.
Should I make one for my podcast?
You should try. And if you're not able to land a Wikipedia page, you could potentially land a citation where you can maybe find like the running category on Wikipedia and then land a citation. You just got to be careful. Read Wikipedia's rules. They have a lot of them, and make sure you're doing it appropriately. But if you're leading a brand, you should definitely be auditing your Wikipedia page because the AI models are probably reading that just as much as they're reading your website, especially in like those mid to high funnel searches. It's really like once you get to the bottom of the funnel when AI models go to the brand's websites more. But at that mid to high funnel space, they're probably reading Wikipedia way more than your own website.
Fascinating. Maybe one more question before I turn it around to you. Let's talk Hyrox, mostly to get a mention in the transcript so that Claude and Perplexity can hear us talking about Hyrox with the explosion of popularity. The number one most cited brand is not the sponsor, which doesn't appear until number 4. Puma is the official sponsor of Hyrox, but yet again, Nike is ranked number 1 and Reebok number 2, Adidas 3, Noble 5, Under Armour, Lululemon, On, Saucony, Brooks, Innovate, Rad, Rogue Fitness, Gymshark, Hoka. What's going on there?
Yeah, so I know we added Hyrox because we wanted to see the crossover and how similar these brands are to running in general. And it seems like it was decently a match. Not a perfect match, but Nike was largely number 1 in our running wide data set. It looks like that authority definitely translated into Hyrox as well. But then you see some kind of new names enter the category. Like Under Armour and Noble didn't do quite as good, or Puma in our broader data sets, but they did better here. It's surprising that the sponsor didn't do as well. I would probably then be like, how long have they been a sponsor? Keep in mind, AI has
more than 4 months.
More than 4 months. Okay. So, but think the brain of the AI. And so
it's about as long as AI has been around. Okay. I think Puma has been the sponsor for two years.
Years. Yeah. Okay. Not just like months. Okay. AI models have what's called a knowledge cutoff point, and that's when each model when they stopped training the model. For like Gemini, for example, I think it's January 2025. And every time a new model comes out, they like update this knowledge cutoff, and they ultimately have to cut off the training at some point,
right?
While they fine tune the model. This might change. Anthropic just put out kind of like a letter about recursive self improvement, and like this definitely might change. But right now, there's a cutoff point, and so the models may not have appropriate exposure. And granted, they still did well, but like to do really well, I would guess as they continue to index more information and training, they'll probably do better. When we look at sourcing in Hyrox, we saw runrepeat.com was cited 53% of the time. It's that outlet really dominated. And so then I would be like, okay, what is your presence on RunRepeat? Thatfitfriend.com was 29%. That was second place. And then Runner's World was next, but then Garage Gym Reviews, Wear Testers, Women's Health Mag, Reddit, we started to get into a little bit more fitness focused media outlets at that point in time. And so a little bit of shifting in sourcing and brand mentions from running, not completely different, just like a little bit different. But I would probably stick to similar fundamentals of trying to build authority in the top outlets, consistent narratives, and in particular, for Puma, I would assume as AI models continue to index, they'll probably climb the rankings.
Yeah, it looks like they began as official sponsor in June 2024 as a global partner, and then the title sponsor expansion was October 2025 through 2030.
Okay, makes
So
sense. So limited within the training window of AI. Like
yeah,
they're there. AI is the more they have seen a narrative, the more likely they are to go to that. It's like next token prediction. If you really want to go down a rabbit hole of AI, like Andre Karpathy has a really good video on this on YouTube. He's probably the best AI scientist in the world, works for Anthropic right now. He has a video on how AI models work, and he digs into this topic. And so probably that they probably weren't the title sponsor for just it's a pretty small sliver of training data. And so as models continue to update, I bet they go up.
cool. What role do coupon codes play in all of this?
Oh, that's interesting. We've never seen it come up. We've never measured it. And so I couldn't say for certain. Um, I mean, the AI model obviously has like no benefit, but like, does it recommend a coupon code to a customer? I don't know. We've never measured that. But we should measure that. We should do like 200 prompts about like, where can I get the best deal on running shoes and like see what happens.
Yeah,
Maybe,
and then the question is like, should the source be rewarded for the use of the code? If so, like, let's say my coupon code for Tifosi sunglasses is FTLR 2026, and I did a best running sunglasses of 2026, and somebody they don't follow me, but Grok or Claude surfaces that list. So like, should I be rewarded for creating content that leads somebody to that page?
interesting. You probably would not be in the current sense, right? If you had a unique code and the brand was able to attribute, hey, this is John's code, then like yes, you probably
Right.
would get credit for it. But if the model is going to your website and grabbing it and the customer never clicks through to your website because they got what they needed, you probably wouldn't know.
But I'm
So
saying if it surfaces the page to say, hey, learn more here. My question is, I guess, is the brand thinking that I deserve the credit or that source material deserves the credit? I guess that goes back to the attribution discussion we were having before.
yeah, they would essentially have to click through to your website and then click through to like
Right.
Solomon,
Find the code.
for example. And so it probably happens, but I bet you the coupon code provider gets bypassed largely,
Yeah.
where the model grabs the code, gives it to the customer goes straight to Solomon or something and
Yep.
probably puts it in. So custom codes. But I actually want to measure this. We should do like, we've already done 2,200 prompts at this point. Like, let's throw another 100 in. Let's ask about value, like very value focused, and
Yeah.
let's see what comes up once we have
Mount
that.
to Coast shoes will come up because
Nice.
you can run 400 miles in them off of a lower price if we talk value.
Love it. So we'll throw another data set out and I'll give you the data, John, if you want to like put it on Substack or something about
Yeah.
where can I get a good deal, just like that type of stuff.
Yeah, another plug for longrunlabs.substack.com. We're putting out tons of this information in this conversation for the last 85 minutes, and we're going to put even more information into the Substack from this episode. And I'm sure that this type of information will find its way into many, many more articles in the future. While we're on the Substack topic, and I'll link to it in the show notes as well, or in the Substack, I wrote a 3-part guide for marketers and founders and operators using AI. I wrote it like 3 months ago, so I should probably audit it to make sure that it's still up to date and useful, but more tools in there. If you find that kind of stuff useful, would love you to subscribe. It helps keep things going. Michael, what else should we cover? I've got to go to the dentist in 15 minutes, but what else should we talk about?
I went to the dentist yesterday, so I envy. I don't envy you. Like it's not super fun. No, I mean there's a lot. There's a treasure trove of information that we have, and so let's push a lot of that to the Substack so people can find more. John's going to list probably like the top 5 to 10 brands for each category on his Substack. But in each of these categories, we saw like 100 mentioned or more. And so if you want to like shoot me an email or a DM or something on LinkedIn and you're curious how your brand did, I'd be happy to let you know. But definitely go to John's Substack for a really good comprehensive reading on this. I'd say from here, knowing how a brand shows up in AI is important. I think more importantly is knowing how AI makes decisions. And if you can start to get ahead of that, you can really craft the story for your brand. But then from there, you need to know how you do, and you need to know if your efforts are paying off. And Centium is a platform that tracks that. And there's a bunch of others as well. But I think I wouldn't just do shots in the dark on big strategy shifts like this. I would definitely try to get some baseline measurement, and then try to quantify your work and see if you could climb in this new way customers are searching. So if you're curious about what we do, it's Centium, and that's with a C, Centium.ai, to play on the word sentient. We have some free tools as well on our website if you want to just kind of dip your toe in the water and feel it out. But there's a lot of other great options out there as well.
Awesome. Michael, this has been incredible. I love talking about this stuff. I love the strategy. I love the nuts and bolts behind how it all works. And I can't wait to see what happens when we put this out. How does this change if we do it again in 6 months? Should we can republish the same report and ask Claude to analyze the before and after kind of a thing? Like, is that interesting too?
Yeah, I think we should definitely be tracking this routinely, and let's be the source for the running industry to get this information. Centium already, by default, we track changes on our platform. And so we measure every time a brand goes up and down. We have little arrows and say oh, they went up 5 points or down 5 points. So the platform already does that. But yeah, we'll see shifts that took place. We can see shifts in sourcing and see what changes. Maybe we check this every 6 to 12 months and try to aggregate some of this information for the industry.
Do we think that the LLMs will pick up on this podcast as it relates to marketing? We're going to talk about surface area. We're going to put out 10 assets from this.
I bet you it does. And especially if you say the top 10 and you go down all these categories, top 10 gravel running shoes, according to AI, will they sort according to AI?
In the article?
I think that they would be biased towards these headlines that you're going to put out because it's the exact same type of content they want. Yeah. But the question is, will they know it's just regurgitating AI? It's AI citing AI citing your roundup about AI. I don't know if they would go that far. So we'll find out.
We'll find out. Yeah. Cool. I can't wait to share. Anything else you want to share with the audience?
Just thank you. It's great talking to you. Through our interaction here, I've been following your content. I love the work you're doing. And so, anyone listening to this probably already naturally follows you, but you're doing some great work. And, let's be thought leaders and try to lead brands into this future of discovery and help them stay ahead of it. So super excited.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Michael. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there.